Rachel Zach. I'm our Chief of Staff here at Felt. I'm so excited to be with you today. My background is as a city planner all across North America. So there's no subject closer to my heart than what we'll be talking about today. We have Will Petty with us, who is a cycling campaigner or advocate from London, who has been working hard to make changes for his streets with a group of really wonderful volunteers. And he's going to tell you a little bit about how they were using maps and collaborative maps in particularly to bring those changes about and communicate with TfL, their agency there. So I will turn it over to you, Will, to begin with a little icebreaker.
Fantastic. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you very much for the introduction and for the invitation. And thanks to everybody for coming along. It's very exciting to see loads of people here. Yeah, so as Rachel told you, my name is Will Petty. I'm based in Hackney in North East London, where I do volunteering work with Hackney Cycling Campaign. We campaign to make cycling safer and more accessible in London. And it was this activity that first brought Felt onto my radar. So at some point last year, we wanted to do some collaborative mapping, and I put a shout out on Twitter to see if anyone could recommend anything. And quite a few people recommended Felt, which I hadn't heard of at that point. So what we wanted was something that was very easy to use, that people pick up intuitively. They didn't have to have any special training or anything like that. People would enjoy using was really important, and also something that would, create a map that we could share at the end, basically. And I'm happy to say that Felt ticked all those boxes, and I've used it loads since then for campaigning, but also for work stuff, and also just making maps for fun. So that's a little bit of the story of how I came across Felt. I'm going to talk you through the collaborative map that we actually made in a bit of detail in a bit. But first of all, as Rachel said, I just want to do a little ice-breaking exercise, as I call it at Felt. So I'm just going to share my screen. All right, thank you. So if you click on that map, on the link in the chat, you should go to the map that you can see. I can already see loads of people popping up there. That's great. What I'm going to ask you to do for this ice-breaking exercise is you should see a map of London. Zoom somewhere where you think the cycling experience needs to be improved and stick a pin in it. And you do that with the little pin icon on the menu bar at the bottom, or you can press P on your screen and then just click to place a pin. And if you're not familiar with London or cycling isn't your focus, don't worry, make something up. Use your imagination. Wow me with your knowledge of British English if you're not from the UK. Basically, if you stick a pin somewhere random and say there are too many cars here, the odds are on your side. So I'm just going to stick a little pin in the map as well as a demonstration. You'll see that when you do that, you get the option to give a name to your pin. So I'd ask you to do that, and then also a little bit of description text as well.
All these options come up for how you want to fill it in.
Yeah.
You can add a description, which you're all doing very well, is actually great here. I don't know if that's true. You can add a picture. We'll add this picture of Ross from One Tree Planted, big Felt fan. Maybe you want to add some details, like you can actually create a template for your pin. So if you're like leading a group of people who are filling in the map, you can actually add your fields if you wanted. So like road type, intersection type, and have people fill in the value. And then Felt works just like PowerPoint, such that you can copy and paste, so they can copy that template and use it to make their marks all over the city. And I think the other thing you demonstrated was route. Is that right?
Yes, I was going to show. Yeah, so you can that it will snap to the road network, and you can choose a mode of transport for that. So you can save a lot of time if you have to draw routes. There we go. You can see that that's happily working on the existing road network. I believe if you select aeroplane, it will just give you straight lines, just in case you want that.
Well, that's if you go too short, but if you go a longer distance, it'll give you the curvature.
Yes. Oh, right. Okay. This airplane thing is better than I thought. Yes, that's brilliant. So those are the routes. And the only other thing, Rachel, I wanted to demonstrate was how you can draw a polygon.
Absolutely.
There we go. Okay. So those are your three basic kind of types for GIS being geographical information systems. you've got points, and then you've got lines, which are basically points joined up by lines, and then you've got polygons, which are lines joined up in a ring like that. So those are the drawing options. Another thing I wanted to show you was that how you can upload pre-existing data. So I'm going to do this to my map, which will hopefully not take too long. Basically, oops. I've got a map layer here, which represents the London borough boundaries. So those are just uploading at the moment. Let's just go back to, I'm trying to see what you can all see on Rachel's screen.
We're processing at 93%. It'll show up.
Oh yeah, okay, right, brilliant. So you can see that that's an existing data layer that I've uploaded. You can do that so that those borough boundaries function a little bit like stuff you've drawn yourself. So you'd be able to move them and change the points. I don't want to do that because I'm pretty sure that they're all in the right place. So what I've done is just upload them basically so they function in the same way as the background layer. So you can change the styling, which Rachel, if you're happy to demonstrate now on the London boroughs. So those have all got simple styling at the moment. That means you can they're all treated the same basically. You can change the color and you can change the fill and stuff like that. There we go. But another clever thing you can do, is you can categorize them. So if you click on simple and you go down to categories, and then color by hectares. Sorry, Rachel, you just mind. There we go. So that's going to start coloring stuff up according to the area. So that data layer I uploaded has got a bit of information for the area of each borough in hectares. There we go. So that's a little bit of stuff you can do automatically. And then also wanted to show you, you can upload from a CSV, which is basically a spreadsheet format. So you'll be familiar with them if you work in Excel. I'm just going to see if I can switch on. I've uploaded basically a list of every pub in London because I thought that would be of interest to people. And the data I had from that, rather than being that GIS format that you can see, the GeoJSON, that's just basically a list of pub names, and then every single one has got coordinates attached to it, and Felt will recognize those coordinates basically. So I've just switched those on just to see if those are popping up.
There they are.
Yeah, okay, so now you can see every single pub in London. As I said, those just came from a spreadsheet where you had latitude, longitude, and the name of the pub. And if you zoom in, I think that, yeah, you can see the names appearing there as well. And Felt will recognize those coordinates automatically and put them in the right place. And you've got some styling options there, as you'd expect as well. You can change the color, you can change the size of things, and you can also categorize things by a value as well. As well as doing color range, you can also do size range. So if, for example, you had some data, I don't know, the minimum price of a pint in each pub, you could categorize them by size according to that. So I think that's kind of the end of stuff you could upload. Oh yeah, I wanted to talk briefly about where you might get this data from as well. So there's a good chance that where you live, there will be a sort of statistical agency that will publish stuff like this. In the UK, we have the Office of National Statistics, where you can get quite a lot of data and all sorts of stuff like this, and they'll have boundaries. And another really good source of stuff is from OpenStreetMap. So OpenStreetMap has a sort of query language where basically you could go along and type in something along the lines of, give me a list of every single pub in Greater London, and you can download stuff from that. So there's lots of things that you might want to do to add to your maps to kind of enhance the information you're putting across there. So that's uploading stuff. You can also download as well. So those points that we drew, Rachel, I don't know if you'd be able to demonstrate basically selecting everybody's points. Sorry, not the pubs. The pubs could probably go off. Yeah, so you can select everything that's the same icon or the same type. Basically, you can select every single dot that people have drawn, and now you can download that as a GeoJSON, which is the same format that I uploaded the borough boundaries in. Why might you want to do that? Well, you might just want to send it to somebody in an email, but the main reason you'd want to do that is to bring it into some kind of bit of GIS software, as geographical information systems. And the main one of those I use is something called QGIS, which, if you haven't come across before, is incredibly powerful, free and open source a bit of software that just lets you do an extraordinary amount of stuff. It's a bit like Photoshop in the sense that if you can imagine it, you can probably do it. There are probably multiple different ways of doing it. You can probably find a YouTube video that tells you how to do it. It's the flip side of that is that it's not massively intuitive or user-friendly. There's a very steep learning curve. I thoroughly recommend putting aside some time and getting to grips with that. It works very well with Felt. So as I said, you can pull stuff from Felt into QGIS. There's also a new plugin. So the open source model means that anybody can write a plugin for it, basically. And Felt have just created a plugin that lets you basically upload a map from QGIS directly to Felt, which I haven't used yet, but I think is going to be incredibly useful in the future. Why would you want to do that is also an important question. Basically, you can manipulate your data that you've created in Felt and add to it, augment it, create whole new layers. As an example of that, say you had created a map of cycle routes, you could take that into QGIS, and then a common function is to buffer. So that would then basically draw a new shape to a given distance, say 200 meters around your cycle network. You can quite trivially get the area of that shape. So you can, if you know the area of your borough, you can, for example, say what percentage of your borough is within 200 meters of a cycle lane. Slightly more sophisticated thing is if you have a data level population, you can then also see what population falls within your buffer shape, and you can say what percentage of the population of your borough lives within 200 meters of a cycle lane. If you have, for example, a map of wards, so if you're not from London, boroughs are broken up into wards, which are sort of small electoral units. If you have that information, you could attach the name of the ward to every one of your points, which is something you could do manually. But if you've got thousands of points, it's preferable to be able to do it quickly. And likewise, for each ward, you could attach the number of points, whatever it is you're measuring. And then you can bring all that stuff back into Felt again. So that's either data that you've manipulated or stuff that you've basically created from scratch. So I think we're getting quite close to the point where you might want to publish a map now. You've drawn stuff on it, you've uploaded and you've downloaded and you've uploaded again. So there are just a few more little things I wanted to demo. Sorry, asking Rachel to demo before I talk you through the actual map we made, for which I probably will need to share my screen again. So one of those things is you can change the default background map. We use the map that Felt created because it's nice and clean for this kind of thing, but you can have a satellite map if you want. So that's one of the options there. There are various sort of monochrome light and dark ones. If it's getting a little bit busy, that might suit the sort of data you've got. I made a map of road widths where I basically recreated the entire street network in different rainbow colors, and for that I wanted the sort of dark map so it didn't distract from that. You can also pull in maps from other places, so you can see that I've got OpenStreetMap there as an option. If you enter the right URL, for example, you can pull in OpenStreetMap. I also have an Ordnance Survey map from the there we go, thank you, that's where you put the URL in. I've also got a load of Ordnance Survey maps from the 1890s, which is a terrible rabbit hole you could fall down. If you think there are lots of pubs in London now, the 1890s say hold my beer. Somebody could map those. I think that would be a lovely project. So those are some different background map options. Commenting is an incredibly useful feature which actually didn't exist when we made our Hackney Cycling Campaign map. So the difference with comments is that a user can only see their own comments. So I don't know if anyone would have tried this, but you could have deleted other people's points if you wanted to, because we all had editing privileges. I hope no one did that. But you probably don't want to give that option to the general public, because either deliberately or accidentally people might mess your map up, basically. So commenting is perfect for that. People can only see their own comments, and then the map owner can see the comments, and you can have little sort of conversations in the replies to the comments. If you wanted to publish the comments, I don't think there's actually a publish comment option yet, but a good workflow would be to download them all. You could download them all as a CSV file, and then you could re-upload them to the map as points of the sort that you've seen. So yeah, that basically that turns Felt into like commonplace, and don't think it's got exactly the same features, but if you wanted to run, I don't know if there's anyone here from a local authority here, but if you wanted to actually run a consultation, I think you could probably do it in Felt using the comment functionality. So yeah, we're definitely going to use that in the future. I think that's going to be incredibly powerful feature for us. So that's comments. A thing that I like to do before publishing a map is just duplicate it. That's incredibly easy to do in Felt. Rachel will show you that. So basically, you have, what I would do is, if you reach a stage where you want to kind of have a version of it that doesn't change, save that as a copy and call that backup or something like that, and then basically carry on with the new version. And then finally, you want to embed this on your website. Oh, not necessarily. You could share the link on social media as I did with you, but you can very easily get an embed link, which is just an iframe like that. So you can just copy that and stick that link in your website, and then you can either view that sort of in an iframe in your website, or people can click through and go to Felt. So I just want to show you the map that we made for Hackney. Okay. Context for this is that Hackney had put in a whole load of low traffic neighborhoods. So in a very short space of time, they'd taken lots of what were previously quite unsafe, unpleasant roads to cycle on, made them pleasant and safe to cycle on, which is great. We love that kind of thing. The problem with this was that to get from one to the other, you had to cross over busy main roads, often without anything to help you. So we identified an opportunity to map those places where some kind of safe crossing over the main road was needed, kind of in the spirit of coming up with some easy wins, because there's never a huge amount of money for this kind of thing. So that was our task. We had about 10 people, I think 10 volunteers in the group who wanted to work on this. We put a map that looked very much like the one we've just created together. It probably took about a week because people were working in their own time, but I think if we'd all sat down on a call like this and done it, we could probably have done it in an hour, a couple of hours or so. That information was all just in people's heads, and we just needed a tool basically to get it out there and get it all in one place. So yeah, like pretty quickly we created a map of dots with people writing stuff like "this is terrible" all over it. A little bit of processing I did after that was to take those dots into QGIS, as I was discussing. The reason for doing that was I wanted to turn those dots into those little squiggles you can see on the line, because basically a dot at a crossroads doesn't really tell you what should be the cycle road and what's the main road. So I wrote a model in QGIS that would sort of do that automatically. I wanted to stress at this point that you don't have to do that in QGIS. Like, you could really easily just do that on the map using the Felt tools. But if you're like me, you quite like, if there's a boring task that you could do in 2 hours that you could automate in a day, I would automate it every time, which means you can replicate it and do it again if you want to. And then, yeah, those squiggles you see basically re-uploaded. So this is what our final map looks like. The pink squiggles are the missing gateways, as we call them, and then the green squiggles are existing gateways. You can see that we've got those low traffic areas, those are LTNs. There's an absolute hero out there called Iden who has basically mapped those for the whole of London, and made that information publicly available. So we just downloaded that and stuck that on Felt. We've got some of the more kind of strategic main roads, which I think came from OpenStreetMap, possibly. Those are the ones that are managed by the Transit Authority rather than the borough. So it's just quite good to know where those are, because they're a little bit harder to deal with. And finally, we put schools on the map. So you can't see them at the moment, but hopefully if I zoom in, yeah, so the schools pop into view at some point. And there's just one last thing I wanted to highlight. There is something called, running underneath the hood of Felt, there is something called Felt style language, which gives you a few more little styling options that you don't necessarily see. Now, I know that they are in the process of moving those kind of hidden secret things into the main user interface, so you might not have to deal with that for very much longer. But let's just see if I can bring that up and show you what that looks like. Basically, it's written in code, which I think it's JSON based, is that right? Not something I'm familiar with. But it is, thank you. But there are a few more options there. One of the things, as I've done for those schools, is you can set the minimum zoom level. So that means that below that zoom, if you zoom out far enough, you won't see those things. Just show, where has it gone down there? Yes, so minimum zoom is set to 15. So you can see the zoom in the top right-hand corner of that little code box. And if I zoom out to beyond 15, suddenly the schools disappear again. So if you're a user of digital maps, you will definitely have experienced this, if not necessarily noticed it, because it basically, there's a lot of work going on to make sure that the things that you see are appropriate for the zoom level. So you don't want to see streets if you're zoomed out at the country level, and likewise, if you zoom into street level, you don't want to see England written across your streets in massive letters. So yeah, that's just a little thing that basically, if there's something you want to do in Felt that you think you should be able to do and you can't find it, it might be in Felt style language, and there's some documentation for that online. And then we embedded that map in the website for Hackney Cycling Campaign, which is going to load, so you can see there people can go and interact with that on the page or open it up in Felt. So yeah, that's it. That's the map as a little sort of prologue. I'd love to be able to say that all these gateways have been built since we made this. That is, of course, not the case, because as I'm sure you all know, these things take a long time, but we do have a commitment on at least one of them, which is fantastic. And we know that this map is in the hands of officers and councillors at Hackney. We talk to them about it, they talk to us about it, we refer back to it repeatedly. We have an asset here that we can make use of. We can screenshot it, we can duplicate it also. I think we did recently, which was lovely, was we ran a kind of family bike ride around the borough, and we tried to take in as many of these missing gateways as possible. And so we invited councillors along. We basically wanted to make the point, look how safe this is when you've got 50 people with you and you've got marshals to stop the traffic. Wouldn't it be good if it was always like this? And we used this map that we created for the gateways as a kind of base for that. So you can kind of, once you've got one of these things, you can kind of remix it and add to it. So yeah, it lives on basically. And that's pretty much it from me. So I think we're going to go over to questions now. When Rachel said we were going to ask people to drop their questions on the outskirts of London, I was like, oh, I've got a name for this. So yeah, we're calling this section "You'll Be Sorry You Asked." So yeah, I'm going to hand up to Rachel. Thanks, Rachel.
Okay, let's do this. I'm going to grab the screen share so we can zoom in on all of these questions. And if you are someone who maybe joined late and don't have access to the map, Alvaro is going to drop the link in, or I can do it actually right now. But go ahead and leave your questions here and we'll do our best to get to them in the time left. The first question is, how can you lock your base map so it does not update as Will changes his own base map? That's a good question. The map owner will be making those changes, so there's no current way to do that. But there are ways to lock your elements. So if you were, for instance, you'll notice if you try to click on this questions for Will box, it doesn't move. So if you're creating the map and you're sharing it with a group of people and there's stuff you don't want them to edit, you can absolutely lock those items. It's possible to have a developer version before publication, new version of our map, our own map. Whoever asked this question, you want to tell us a little bit more context about your question?
Yes, I can. It's me, it's Carol, and it's because if I publish my map and I want to do some modification, but not sure about my modification, I don't want that the public version is impacted by my test.
Got it. Okay. Alvaro, do you have any thoughts about how that could happen with Felt?
Yeah, sure. So I think the easiest way to do this would be to duplicate the map, which is something that I think was going to be shown before. But in the top left, in the Felt menu, just clicking there, you can click on duplicate map and then create a copy. You can do all your tests there and see if they work out, and then if so, bring them to the public version you have, or even swap them out, and share a new link once you're sure of those changes.
Yeah, and if those changes are happening with elements, you can actually, like those pins that you were creating, you can actually copy and paste them into the map and their coordinates will stay. So you can just copy them once you're sure into the map and you won't have to update any links that you've sent out. Okay, someone asked, how did you change metric of area? Okay, so we have a very mixed audience here. So this is an important question. Everybody wants their own units. So Felt has a Command K menu, which you can use to access anything. If you think something should exist and you're having trouble finding it in any of the point and click menus, I really recommend this for it'll just make you move around like a pro. So I can just type in units here and all of a sudden I have this option, switch to US units, because right now I'm in metric, and vice versa. You can also do this sort of element by element. So what you saw earlier was me creating a polygon. And then over here in the styling panel, you have this area option. I turn that on. So now it's in square miles, but I want to change it. So I go to units again, switch to metric units, and now I'm using the metric system. Cool. Can we add an icon for all pubs? Good question.
I do not know the answer to that. I think because they were basically uploaded as a background layer. I think that means, does that are you limited to choosing the same icon for each one in that case?
Yes, that is currently you can't use symbols when you upload your data layer.
Yeah, I mean, if you uploaded them as individual, I can't remember what the alternative is called, but if you upload, I mean, I think it was probably too many to upload as the alternative to a data layer, but if you had done that, you would be able to manually change the symbols. Is that right?
Yes.
And like you could have a nice pint of beer for each one, but yes. I think probably not currently.
And also, maybe you have a huge data layer, but you're focused in just a county. There is, region, there is a way to turn your data into elements. And it will carry over all that data. So the flying chariot was in this data set, but it now lives on top as an element in Felt. And then I can switch to a symbol. So if I wanted to, for instance, turn this into a beer symbol, I could do that. So there is a easy way to move from a read-only data layer to something more editable. If you're trying to more customize the data set you might grab from an agency or open source tool.
Rach, can I just check, are you working in a copy now? I can't see people in the map.
Oh, yes, I am working in a copy. I'm going to go into right back to where we were.
There we go. Yeah.
Okay. I think we covered the way that you prevent people from editing and changing is if you turn on lock. And so this question is, most of the analysis needs to be done outside of Felt. Yes, QGIS and ArcMap. Yeah, currently transformations and analyses occur outside of Felt, and Felt is the place to share and collaborate. So that's the current system, but I think you'll see more and more from us very quickly, and Will can attest to our development speed. But if you have any common transformation or analysis requests, let us know. And the other thing I will say is we continue to add ways to get your data into Felt more easily. And so for instance, you can add programmatically from our API. I linked to that in the chat, or you can add from a URL. So if you're somebody who works with Google Sheets, if you copy and paste that sheet link into Felt, the data will be uploaded. So it's very easy to run your analysis or have people add on to another collaborative tool and then visualize it as a map in Felt. Is there a way to capture demographic data for users and their associated input?
Rach, I think that might be a reference to what I was saying about the fact that you could use it to run a consultation. Just because obviously if you're doing that, it's quite important to gather that kind of data, which is a really good point actually. Like I would use it for, as a campaigner, I would use that, but yeah, I guess it does have a limitation in that. I think I'm right in saying that you can capture names and email addresses. Is that right?
Yes.
From commenters.
Mm-hmm.
But probably nothing else at this point. Is that about right?
That is not currently a field that we have in Felt,
yeah.
But you could ask people to include it in their comment, for instance.
Yeah.
Okay. Can Felt reference hosted data sets? Yes, it can. This was a new feature. Maybe Alvaro, you could link to a recent tweet about this. in the chat, but by adding from URL, you can add any hosted data to Felt and it will appear internet fast for you to use immediately. And then, oh, this one's a good one for you, Will. Have you used this to collaborate with any city or borough staff?
Yeah, so I spoke a little bit at the end about what we've done with this and how we've tried to get it into the hands of people who work for the borough. It's hosted on the Cycling Campaign website, and we've tweeted it, and I think we've probably all emailed individually councillors. I would say that we're quite lucky in Hackney, and we have a fairly close relationship with the borough, and I know that that's not going to be the same for all people working in the sort of the field of cycling activism. Last year I did some work with various other campaigners around the city, and you do kind of feel a little bit like you're playing the cycling campaigning game on easy setting when you're in Hackney. It is what it is. So I think we're quite lucky to have that quite kind of close relationship with people. It's not adversarial in the way that it is in some boroughs. You know, we don't always get what we want, but we do have quite a good relationship with them. So I mean, those are the ways in which we've got it into their hands, and as I would say, like, we're quite lucky, and they do actually pay attention to that kind of stuff. But I think, you know, if you're creating campaigning tools, then having something as appealing like a map is really, really helpful. Like, and it's basically, if I want to interact with something and mess about with it, then that gives me an idea that other people will want to as well. So yeah, I think it's just a really, really useful thing to have in your hands, to put out there, to show to members of the public, and to show to people in the council. And you know, when new consultations come up, we can refer them back to this because that information is already there, which means we can be a little bit sort of proactive about stuff. We're also probably going to do a project in the future where we map where we think cycle routes should be, which is a sort of next step, joining up these gateways. And again, we want to try and be proactive about that, so that if something comes up for consultation, we can go, we already have a plan for this. You know, you don't need to replicate work. I think, like, you know, taking work off people is always welcome. So yeah, that's I hope that's an answer to that question.
Yeah, awesome. And then how best to limit additions to authorized people or allow uploads from anyone, but then approve them? I can take this if you'd like. So the best way to, we have lots of different fidelity of sharing. We're a collaborative tool. So you can imagine just like a Google Doc, you have a lot of fidelity of what you're allowing people to do. The number one way is to set up a team. So that team, you can give different users editor or viewing access to different maps, but your team will be able, that are set to editor, will be able to edit all the maps. And then you can, and whether or not you do that, you'll have access to, this is not my map, so I can't actually demo this, but you'll have access to a bunch of different sharing options. So you can add people by email and set them to editor, or you can add them as viewers. Editors will be able to upload data, whereas viewers will not. And that is the best way to have some authority over who gets to do what in a map. So if you're not sure about if you want to monitor the data coming in, the best thing to do is to actually have a separate map where people are uploading the data, and then you decide what you want to keep or delete right from the legend.
Okay, that's interesting. Can I ask a follow-up about that?
Sure.
Can you copy individual items from map to map? Like, what would be the way to do that? Because if I were to have a secondary map where people could submit suggestions or whatever, then how do I easily get that over to the live map that after it's been approved?
Yeah, so if they were to upload the data as elements, which is what I'd imagine you'd want approved, but correct me if I'm wrong. Like, here we are in this copy of the map, right? I'm just going to paste this right back into this map. And we have the element there.
Oh, I see. So yeah, it would probably be like dots or one of the other things, because I'm a streets campaigner. So,
Yeah.
But yeah, so you would take one of these things that somebody, one of those polygons or the anyway, and then you would just copy it, switch to the other tab and paste it. It's that easy?
Yeah, you're
Is it going to retain the geolocation data too? Is it actually going to drop in the same place?
Alvaro, correct me if I'm wrong, but the pin information should paste accurately. Yeah.
Yep, you can just copy paste. And you
Great.
can grab a selection and paste them as well. If you
Great.
want to bring it up at the same time.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay.
It's-
I'll have to give that a shot. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. And we'd love to hear about it. Okay. We are 1 minute from the end. So I do want to just spend this last minute thanking Will for this amazing presentation. I can look at some of these questions and pull together some resources that address them in the email that will go out with the recording. And I thank you all for joining us today. The energy was great. It was great to see you all, and I wish you well on your work.